Look, on this topic of the United States and going to war, I think it's important to start from first principles. And, you know, the highest priority is to protect American interest without war. That's what our objective should be. And to do that, you have to start by asking the fundamental question, what are you talking about when you say national security interest? Before you get down into the weeds, what is the big picture? My definition of national interest is the classic of protecting the country, protecting its citizens, protecting our allies, protecting our commercial interests around the world. You know, we had a Pacific Squadron in 1821 before we had a state bordering on the Pacific Ocean, 30 years almost before California came in. So these are important. What are not national security issues are abstractions. The Obama administration thinks that climate change is a national security issue. Wrong. They think the United States has a responsibility to protect against humanitarian disasters around the world. Also wrong. Nor do we have a Wilsonian obligation to make the world safe for democracy. Our philosophy was summed up by the first Roosevelt, the Republican Roosevelt, who said, first and foremost, we are to make the world safe for ourselves. And this is something that I think across the spectrum here, conservative, libertarian, however you describe yourself, that's basic. Let's start with Adam Smith, if you want a good libertarian source. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith says, the first duty of the sovereign is that of protecting the society from the violence and invasion of other independent societies, which can be performed only by means of military force. That's what our interests center around. Now, so the key question then is, how do you do that? And as KT said, you start with the principle of deterrence. This is not some Cold War concept. The ancient Romans said, si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And George Washington, in the first State of the Union message, when they were still worth something, George Washington said, almost a direct translation, to be prepared for war is one of the most effectual means of preserving peace. So today, what that means is the following. We need a president who believes in American exceptionalism, who believes that American strength internationally is a positive force for peace, stability, and commerce, and who believes that ultimately only the United States itself can protect its interests, not in international institutions like the United Nations. We also need an assertive international political and diplomatic presence. The essence of statecraft is looking at small crises and problems around the world and acting early to prevent them from becoming major problems, and to do it when the costs are low and the benefits are high. And I'll just give you one historical example. If the West had stopped Hitler from moving into the Rhineland in 1936, the entire course of 20th century history would have been different. Now, what it also means, and we've got to be honest with ourselves here, is we need adequate resources to be able to maintain a credible posture of deterrence, especially in the defense budget. And I'm prepared to argue without hesitation, not all budget dollars are equal. A dollar spent on a carrier task force is different than a dollar spent on soybean subsidies. I think Ronald Reagan recognized this throughout his tenure. He said the top priority of the federal government is the safety of the country. He said to his Defense Secretary Cap Weinberger, defense is more than a budget line item. He said at the recommissioning of the New Jersey in 1982, yes, the cost is high, but the price of neglect would be infinitely higher. Now, deterrence can break down. That's an unfortunate fact, where our interests are threatened in palpable ways, where we're attacked ourselves, where our allies are. We have to act to defend ourselves. And this is where the hard choices are made. But let me be also clear. I think it's important that we understand and endorse that the preemptive use of military force is also necessary and appropriate, especially against terrorists and the weapons of mass destruction. This is a necessary step to prevent innocent civilians from being killed. And again, this is a lesson of history. It's not a recent lesson. Winston Churchill said many years ago we should have strangled Bolshevism in its cradle after the Russian Revolution. He was entirely correct. This doesn't mean that the use of force always and everywhere involves exactly the same thing. There are very difficult questions at issue here, but it also means this is not a debate about interventionism versus non-interventionism or unilateralism versus multilateralism. Those are instrumental questions. The real question is how to protect American interest. And I think it's very important here not to fall for the Obama trap that you either engage in diplomacy or you're in all-out nuclear war. That is a ruse that is used too often, and we need to be careful of not, as I say, falling into that trap. The key here is that American strength is not provocative. American weakness is provocative, and that's why we've got the most provocative administration in our history in office now. Thank you very much.